Welcome back to Speaking Truth to Goodness. I'm one of your hosts, Patty Robron, and I record this podcast with my friend Jerry Atkin. And for this season, we're joined by our wonderful guest host, Andra Voltavine. In this episode, we welcome Durrell Kinsey Bey, a Moorish American Agrarian Moslem and mayoral candidate here in Portland, Oregon, whose activism and vision are lighting up Portland's political landscape. Durrell brings a unique blend of wisdom and deep-rooted community connections to the campaign trail. As a youth advocate, a member of the Moorish Science Temple of America, and a supporter of Black Food Sovereignty Coalition, Durrell is dedicated to nurturing a prosperous Portland that embraces all its inhabitants with healing justice and moral rejuvenation. Durrell takes the time to share who he is, what he believes in, and the ideas that inspire him toward change, no matter how this election goes. With the time and space to expound on it, Durrell shares his life, his influences, and his passions. Durrell shares what it means to be a Moorish American, the profound impact of including youth in our political movements, and how his varied experiences and associations shape his hopes for Portland. Stay tuned as we look at the intersections of activism, governance, and community building with Durrell Kinsey Bey. Remember to engage with us by liking, commenting, and subscribing, and let's continue this conversation about shaping a just and vibrant future for Portland. Here it is. Welcome to the table, everyone. Welcome to being here to get to know and to celebrate Durrell Kinsey Bey, a mayoral candidate here in Portland. And Andra, I just want to start by saying thank you for being so amazing in your own campaign to realize that this is a moment to rise together. And so thank you for bringing in Durrell and the rest of the people that are going to be coming here over the next few weeks. Is there anything you want to say to get us started out for the evening?
Patty, thank you so much for having me here, and it's really been a pleasure to get to know so many of the other candidates, and I feel like I was in kind of a dark place looking at politics last year and really not certain about what was going to come of everything. And so as I was looking at the other mayoral candidates, I was like, a little bit not aligned. And then I saw Durrell and I'm like, okay, yes, go. I got to help this guy. So I immediately emailed Durrell and I was like, okay, what do you need help with? Let's go. And really, ever since we've really enjoyed collaborating. We've been working together, and it's just been a delight. So I'm really excited to make sure that he gets the mic.
So part of the change is that you can work collaboratively. It's not sudden death. It's not winner take all.
Right.
It's like, how do we rise together? How do we take what we all know? And I think the way the process is going, conversation last week, something very special is happening before a single ballot is cast, which is people are getting to know each other and each other's issues in a way that they wouldn't from reading it in the paper or reading in a book. I love the word embodied. We embody our beliefs, what we hope for. When we are what we hope for is already here. And now we just have to grow it. That's all we have to do. So I love this idea that this new form of city government allows collaboration.
Right.
I mean, we're not getting out of this without collaboration everywhere. We've got to start somewhere. City government would be a great place to start.
Yeah, be an example for people to follow.
Yeah.
Well, and Durrell, you strike me as someone, just with the little I know about you, that does embody the idea of collaboration and community in all the work you've been doing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more about it.
And how you came to this place of wanting to be this person and do this work.
Yeah. It is an honor to be able to changed the narrative of being a young man of African descent and having had the experiences, both indirect and direct, in this American society, and no longer being the victim, no longer perpetuating the victim mentality, because the individuals that perpetuated the harm, they would end up winning if that was the case. We're more than conquerors. It is a divine time to recognize that we are in full control. It is expressed in the Constitution as such. We, the people, not we, the bureaucratic structures, or we, the narcissistic, egotistical individuals.
Oh, we're just going to put it right out there, huh?
We have to.
Yes.
Because we have to write a vision and make it plain so individuals can be able to see what is and what is not.
Beautiful.
Wow. Thank you. I know I'm just going to have a minute with that.
Okay, thank you for coming, ladies.
What did sum it up?
I guess I wonder if we could back up a little bit and get to know you more, because in the description of this episode, there's a lot of things that maybe some of our listeners aren't terribly familiar with. Like, for example, you are a Moorish American. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, to not be too long-winded, I know we have limited time here, but Moorish Americans are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. Not Morocco, but more so the Moroccan Empire. The Kingdom of Morocco was founded in 1956, and there's a city in Indiana that was founded in 1856. So puts things in perspective to recognize that the Kingdom of Morocco is not something that is ancient, it's something that is modern. The ruler in Morocco's title, based off our ancestral history, is Sultan. It's not king, nor is it president. And presently today, I believe King Mohammed, he is recognized as a king. But in the Islamic world, sultans have kings in their empire. So it's a larger government structure. Obviously, we have transformed from that, and we're in a new era of time, and we're striving to disassociate with the empire structure, and now moving to nation states. The little bit of, a small snapshot in history and who the Moors are. They, when you look up in Google, you'll see the Muslims that invaded the Iberian Peninsula in 711 AD, and they spread Islam, and they did something very unique that was contrary to most Muslims in the Muslim or Islamic world, and it was not really exercising the spirit of compulsion. So although there's a lot of controversy, I guess, with Islam today, the Islam of yesterday is a lot different and was a lot different. And the Moorish people were the people who kind of exercised that. So give you an example of what a Moorish kingdom or jurisdiction would look like. You had Christians. You had Jews, you had Catholics, you had probably, I don't know for sure, you probably had atheists, right? And they all lived in this Islamic society. Now, granted, there were probably different privileges for Muslims. I don't think that could be negated. But the thing is, there's no mandatory religion that was superimposed on the people that already were living the life accordingly. What we call in Arabic is it's el-Kitab, referencing the book, the people of the book. Mm-hmm. So those who were Christians, those who were Jews, they represented the Mila Ibrahim, the way of Abraham. And so Abraham, regardless of, people believe he existed or not, he was and is the example that encapsulated all three religions. And even, you could say the fourth, which is Hinduism. not many people are aware of that component because there were some individuals, we won't get too deep into it, but there's some individuals that did not want anyone to really learn anything. They were suppressing information. And so when the Moors came into Iberian Peninsula and they were teaching a lot of different sciences and, aqueduct systems, showing how to establish the light structures to pave the streets so people can see at night. There's a lot of industry that they brought to Europe. Europe was in the Dark Ages for a long time, and there's Black Plague and things of that nature. And we were responsible for, ironically, providing moral rejuvenation and healing justice. It's kind of a revelation that I just kind of realized that that's what we were doing, because it was all rooted in like actually healing the people from being sick. And the religious freedom to express yourself was minimal restrictions. Like now today in Islam, you think there's all about restrictions and women have no rights. And that wasn't the case at that time. You had women that were teaching in mosques. You had women that started one of the oldest universities in the history of the world. There's the University of Fez, which is in Fez, Morocco. I don't have my Fez on today, but you have seen my Fez, and that is where the headdress was mass produced. And the university was founded by Al-Fatima. It was a woman, a Muslim woman to be specific. So that's kind of more the, I could you say, a certain period of history. Prior to that, you're going to, what's called the Medu Necher, which is also known as the hieroglyphics. So in the hieroglyphics, you can see where the word Moor is represented. And that representation is dealing with those who are high priests. Okay. The high priests were also known as Moors. And so you take that lineage from ancient Kemet, which is what is Egypt's now today, and you bring that all the way down to now 1913. There's an organization that's founded known as the Moorish Science Temple of America, founded by Noble Ali. And he is the founder of the oldest American-based Islamic society in the history of our country. Not many people know about him. He was assassinated, and he had issues with the federal government because he was adding value to those individuals at that particular time who identified as Negro, Black, and colored, and of course today African American. So he painted a picture to kind of encapsulate the lack of need to identify as a color. Because before people who identify as Black today, before they were in slavery, they were identified as Moors, like globally. This is like a standard of just how they were identified. Sometimes they're identified as Ethiopians. Sometimes they're identified as Cushites, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But towards the, I guess, William Shakespeare era, it was all Moors, and then became known as Blackamoors. And that was the intentional plan to wipe Moorish culture and people off the face of the earth. And so, being the natural human thing to preserve one's life and existence and family, they converted to Christianity to preserve their life. Some did not do that, and they died. Some fled and went to different parts of Africa, different parts of Eastern Europe, and they learned the languages there, and they kind of assimilated into those societies and had children. And that's where you get, Gannibal, who was a Russian general in the Russian military, and who is African descent. And you start seeing all these different random so-called Black people in these European coat of arms, or these European historical stories, or these mythical stories that are actually real stories. Like, Moorish history is so vast for world history, but it's been neglected. And it's not in the best interest of the United States to project this existence of these people. But yet, they're the ones that got Aristotle, Socrates, Plato's information, and they converted it or transliterated it from the Greek to the Arabic, and they then birthed the Latin language, which that's not something that's considered. It's considered a dead language because the people that use it are now in a dead state, and they call themselves black, which in common law, try not to get too deep, but in common law, it's civilator mortuus, which means dead in the eyes of the law. And so when you identify yourself as something that was created by someone else or something else, you then become their property. Just like when the Bible, God said, Adam named these things. Oh, this is a goat. This is, whatever language he was speaking, he had dominion over those things. And so nobody really wanted to stress the importance of us identifying who we are and standing on that, whether our life was at risk or not. And we then reestablished our Moorish heritage and culture, and we are now American citizens, so we are Moorish American. Like, that's like a small, with all the historical context I could possibly give you in that short segment.
You are correct. Google did not give me that.
Well, the thing is connecting dots.
Yeah.
Which just like the game, like just connecting those dots is so much fun. Because like, if you look in history and you say, oh, I wonder who the Berbers were. You're like, oh, the Berbers, North Africa. They were this tribe. And the Amazigh, there was another tribe. Okay, that's so cool. But they don't tell you that those are Moorish tribes. And then they don't tell you that there were Jews who were Moors, who were not Muslims. Mm-hmm. Right? Because Moorish people are Semitic people.
Yeah.
So how does this translate into the energy in you to come forward into a political arena in hope of healing?
One of the biggest things that I would say is uplifting of fallen humanity. Because when you look at just particularly America, and you bear witness that there's many lies that have been told on every single possible thing you could think of that causes things to be distorted. So if they're distorted, then things get murky. And things get stagnant. Just like the story in VeggieTales.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Did you watch VeggieTales? Because I definitely watched
When
VeggieTales.
I'm having a moment that you just said that.
Yeah,
Okay.
nostalgic. He
What
kept
the
lying.
hell- What the hell are you talking about?
He kept lying.
Which one?
The one when he kept lying and lying and lying and never told the truth, and he got so big he started destroying the whole entire town.
Oh, okay.
And all the people in it.
Yeah, we've
And
got
then the
Larry
moment-
Boy coming up.
Yeah.
You remember Larry Boy? Yeah, the rumor weed. The rumor weed.
All I remember is where is my
I'll
hairbrush.
just
I'm
go
sorry.
get it.
Okay, that's fair. I loved
Talk
that
about
episode,
something
I will say.
going back.
Yeah, that's it.
I missed something. I did. I cleared it up.
So there's this like religious kids show that where they would tell Bible stories, but all the characters were vegetables, and it was very much like me and Patty and Durrell's time. Like it was a very millennial moment.
I was in college, so I'm a little older than y'all.
Okay,
but
all
it's
right,
Yeah.
all right. Durrell and I are the same age though. We're like
30.
weeks apart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
It's awesome. I mean, I watched it like a
I'm
dork
a
in
little
college
bit,
anyway.
little bit
Okay,
older than,
fair enough.
than you.
Okay.
At
So
at
maybe
83.
maybe I can use a reference. Let's see. You said 83. You were in high school.
I was in high school in I graduated in 1957.
Okay. So
Came back from Africa in 1967, which was a hell of a year to come back to the United States.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
you're familiar with Patrice Lumumba?
I am.
Okay.
Well, not personally.
Well, of course,
Right.
but the era, right? It
I
was
did
about
meet
truth.
Jomo Kenyatta, but that's another story.
Okay.
Okay, microphone.
So yeah,
But
just give me an
still,
example of those freedom fighters that you're aware of. Malcolm.
Yes, I am.
Stokely
and-
Carmichael.
Yes, absolutely. And my concern is, just taking just from that piece, is the energy of the civil rights movement and people literally willing to put their lives on the line for what they believed created an environment in which lots of really good things could happen. And I'm trying to figure out in my own mind how we get back to a place where people can engage as deeply and as passionately, because this felt I felt more alive. I mean, I still feel very alive. There's no question about that. But I don't have the community around me that you're trying to rebuild. So what I'm interested in is how, as you enter this political process, as community organizers, because that's basically we're trying to organize communities. We're not trying to get political power. We may need it in order to accomplish certain things, but the goal is to reconnect that which has been broken. So I see this as a moment where we can make that effort. Will we be successful? It's up to us, I suppose. But that's the moment of hope for me in these new elections, and the fact that you come as a representative of the issues of climate, which affect everyone. And I think we talked last week. You have conversations with all of the candidates, so that they're learning this reality in a way that you don't learn from reading the newspaper or reading a book. Embodying. I'm going to come back to my word for tonight, embodying.
Mm-hmm.
We show people what it looks like to live a good life for all of us, not just some of us. So that is what in this moment gives me hope. And, I've been around politics for way too long, man. Double jeopardy shouldn't have to do it this long, and it shouldn't get this toxic. That's just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I see a lot of hopefulness in this. So I see what you are bringing from your tradition, your heritage, and how that shaped you to now be this healing force on the planet.
Yeah. Like I was saying earlier, with the identity, right? Nationality is the order of the day, is how I see it. And I think that in this American society, we kind of told every immigrant that came to this country to disassociate their culture and heritage and maybe even their religion, to suppress it, water it down for the sake of someone else's own approbation. And that is a grave mistake, and it's diametrically opposed to the Constitution. So this Americanness that we have kind of trivialized is a real thing. It's just that it has to be in the proper context when you're talking about truth and history of what happened here, mm-hmm. and why it happened and why it's still happening, and who's benefiting from it, being one way versus another, financially or socially or economically, what have you. We have to get to the bottom of these things. And we get there by how we think, reason, will, and understand. These are the actions of our souls. This is how the soul activates itself, by thinking, reasoning, willing, and understanding. And we have to have accurate thinking and accurate willing and accurate understanding, because understanding is the rock on which we build ourselves to be able to have a more expansive world view to the things that are happening. From just going to your neighbor's home, right? Because we're talking about climate change and environmental justice, right? Because there's climates and environments that are toxic, and they're in four walls with a window or no window, like those that are in prison. Brother spent like 2 years in prison, and the things that happen in there, right? What we call prison, right? Because there's some people that are in prison right now in their own body, and they're allegedly free to walk around, be able to go to the grocery store, buy things, have a job, have a business, but they're in prison. This is mental bondage, which I often call mental slavery. And so to set these captives free, we have to embrace the truth. Not my truth, the truth. Yeah. We know what the truth is because the truth is the only thing that doesn't change. It's always constant. It never stops. It's perpetual. And it gives us life each and every day when we embrace it. And so then we take a moment and we internalize our own perspective, and then we speak up about what we're experiencing. We don't suppress it to have other people be satisfied by our silence, like they call suffering in silence.
Patty Robron.
What?
This is what he's talking about, is what I see you living out every day.
That's what she said.
Well,
Well, I mean, all of that's resonating real hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
me and Patty have had lots of conversations about like, how do we get people out in the street? How do we get people to wake up? So yeah, this is all really resonating
How do we
for
get people
sure.
to stop and breathe and embrace the truth?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm listening to this book right now called Sand Talk, which is by an Indigenous person in Australia, and they talk a lot in that book about embracing the diversity and how in Australia they had many Indigenous tribes, and they've kind of been all conglomerated in the identity of Aboriginal, right? But the everything about their culture is no, we all have diverse opinions. We need to be talking to people who are diametrically opposed to us and listening for that kind of a truth, and that is the purpose. That is the goal, is to be in diversity and to be unassimilated, which is so contrary to almost all of American history.
I'm going to say something very controversial. And I'm going to give you a story first. So there was a man named Marcus Garvey. He was one of the most prolific African leaders in the history of humanity, in my opinion. He is responsible for what we call today as the African Union, and a lot of the independence movements that took place in Africa were by way of some of his speeches that he did in the 1920s, 1930s. So much so that when you're talking about freedom and fighting for liberation, Ho Chi Minh was one of those individuals that came to the meetings in Harlem in the 1920s and then went to Vietnam and did what he had to do for his people. So he also, meaning Marcus Garvey, he had a conversation with the Ku Klux Klan. And he said, if you're so adamant about us going back to Africa, would you end up paying our way? So I say that because he had a conversation, and I'm sure it's probably more than one. And today, some would say that's something I would never do, right? But for me, again, it goes back to the truth, because we're taking the veil off a lot of secret societies and secret organizations and secret intentions that people think are secret. That's why the truth is associated with light, because when it shines in the dark, we could see very clearly. It's evident, right? So when talking about diametrically opposed views, there's an organization known as the Ku Klux Klan. And we know they have these white sheets and they cover their head and things of that nature. And they're a part of a Christian organization, as they would deem it. And come to find out that those actual white robes that they wear are actually inspired directly by the Moorish people. So now we have to think, well, why on earth would they engulf themselves or embody this regalia to then project that it's representing something else that's evil when it's really not? And then come to find out that they have a book that they read, right? It's called the Quran. And I told you, I introduced myself as a Muslim, right? Why on earth, if you hate Muslims so much, why would you have anything associated closely with those evil people called Muslims? So it's very hypocritical. And it goes to show that the individuals who founded that organization were a part of some organizations that the people that they were being followed by, the people that were following them rather, did not have a clue about the actual associations. Same thing with the Aryan Nation. They're going to get very upset by this. There's a friend of mine, I will not mention his name, but his father is the co-founder of an organization that some of y'all are familiar with called Black Panther Party, and of self-defense. And he also is part of the Black Guerrilla family. And he's also the co-founder of Kwanzaa. And this gentleman still lives here in Portland, Oregon. And his father was the Minister of Education for the Black Guerrilla family, which is basically the Black CIA. And they were responsible for assisting the Aryan nation with a codified body of laws, i.e. a constitution, for them to be able to govern their organization. Now, of course, this was in prison. Yet, if you hate us so much, why on earth would you even take anything from us if we are the bottom of the barrel and these N-words and all these types of things? Again, hypocrisy. Then we look at their symbol, the swastika. The swastika is African in origin, and there's no one that could refute that. Again, why are you using symbols? Why you can't just make another symbol? So now we know that Adolf Hitler really either was confused or he was very aware and intentionally wanted to deceive many, 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 many people. As his teacher was Madame Blavatsky from Russia. She was an occultist. And she had teachers who indeed were Moors. So we really have to recognize that a lot of these things that we consider power are nothing but illusions. And these diametric opposed views, in real reality, they're not really different. It's just our perception of what it is that we're looking at. You know, just like the story of the elephant. 4 of us. Andra is by the toes, on the floor, on their stomach. You're on your stomach, right? By the toes of the elephant. You're by the tail. You're by the trunk. And I'm under the belly. And I say, hey, Terry, right?
Jerry.
Jerry.
One of those areas.
Jerry, what do you feel about this creature, because we're blindfolded? What do you feel about this creature that we are touching? Oh, it's like a fuzzy ball, but it's like a snake. It's a snake with a fuzz ball on it, being the tail. You say, oh, no, this is an anaconda. This is not at all an elephant. And I said, well, this is like a big, huge belly. This must be like a bear, right? And Andra says, oh, well, this seems like a little mini baby dinosaur, like a turtle, because of the little toenails for the elephant. So again, we're looking at the same thing, even though we're blindfolded. We're getting our perception true just from that ray of light that we are casting. Mm-hmm. So that's one of my biggest ambitions, is to kind of eradicate this false sense of bravado or confidence about hate. It's like literally love conquers everything. And now it's also about submission to that love and yielding to it, which some people in the so-called far right may have issues with, because they're wanting to superimpose certain ideologies on people, and yet they don't want the so-called far left to superimpose ideas on them. The thing is, left and right, if you think about your hands, is a part of a body.
All right.
And so, they should work hand in hand. Also, even thinking about the left brain and the right brain, they have to work together and have those neurons firing at all cylinders so the body can think, reason, will, and understand effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think actually that's another place where I think we would benefit from a lot more diversity. We know that, to say, the two-party system doesn't work, and that it just creates adversity and makes enemies of people. Whereas if we can have a multiplicity of political parties, of political movements, of alignments, of thought patterns, I think that we have a richer community rather than having a binary system. I know as a non-binary person that seems like a very me thing to say, but it's true. I think that it makes for a more luscious and rich society, and where we have more experience engaging with people who challenge us, who we can learn from, or we can say, okay, I heard you, I really heard you, and maybe I feel differently, and that's also beautiful. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's beautiful.
When you say that, what I think of is how many species of creatures that are existing on the planet Earth, let alone land versus water, the air. I mean, land, air, and water. That's called, at least you could say, it's law. And that's what governs, everything, lengths, angles, and widths, that geometric experience that we're having in this dimension.
Oh, now we're getting to good places.
I'm so here for this.
That's amazing.
That's as many thoughts that we have. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, there's so much to engulf ourselves and embody with these concepts that we're using, because words are their spirit. And so each individual that speaks, they have a spirit attached in every word. And so sometimes we have to strive to make sure those intentions are clear, because intent versus impact is really an aspect of what we're really talking about. Because the impact of someone saying, I'm a good businessman, that was the intent to have a business, and the impact was someone was made a slave. You know what I'm saying? It was a huge business. Objectively speaking, it was a massive business. But see, my thing, as one of my campaign values, is economic optimism. Meaning this, for all of you that are business owners, I aspire for you to not pay taxes anymore, just like you haven't been paying. Very, very, very controversial. But this is for the sake of social equity. So if you are not intending to create an environment where social equity is at the forefront of your ethos, then you will be taxed completely to probably bankruptcy. I don't know. We have to be very firm on these principles. We got to be. There's some laws that holding us down. They're called zoning laws. We're talking about affordable housing. We're talking about there's no place to build, and we're talking about all these things. A lot of talking. It's important to communicate, though. Communicate to the wise for their own improvement, for your own improvement, and communicate the ignorant for their instructions, because people have to be instructed. And when you look at those who are ignorant, it's not the people that don't have any money sometimes. But that's the status quo. The people that don't have any money, they're ignorant. Right. Yeah, that's not the case. There's people that had a meeting that specifically designed a system, this new system that we are in, and it was in 1913. And then we know it's on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia, where the Federal Reserve Bank was formed. I mean, this is not some conspiracy theory. This actually happened. It's documented. We watched the movie Titanic. We thought it was super sad and romantic, the sex scene and all that type of stuff. But we got distracted because we didn't realize that was a real event, and J.P. Morgan was a part of it. And there was other individuals that were part of it, the Carnegies, a few others. And someone had an insurance policy on the ship. They said they were going to have a meeting. They were going to tell them these great ideas. They told all these people to come that had all these assets that somehow they had a vested interest in. And so when they made sure that ship sunk to the bottom of the ocean, they were able to capitalize on it. I'm not sure who that was, but they're still having family members and associates alive. So now we know.
So I'm curious, going back to taxing businesses, just so that I understand. So are you talking about setting sort of a set of rules, for instance, around whether or not people are treating the ecology well and, are doing best business practice in terms of sustainability and like true sustainability, not just, lip service or, okay, yeah, we're going to do green sustainability or greenwashing. So not greenwashing, but actually truly working with the land, truly regenerating the land, being good for the land and the people. So you're saying that there would be sort of tax incentives, tax breaks for that kind of business, whereas businesses that are causing a lot of toxicity, whether in culture or in the ecology, would be taxed very heavily in your view.
Right. So perfect examples, business that comes in mind, and it's just reality. I'm not fearful of these entities because I'm a spirit. I'm not this body. So whatever that supposed to be interpreted, that could be interpreted that way. But those company called Intel, very innovative in regards to the industry of technology. However, in regards to regeneration, right? Regeneration of the thinking, or regeneration of narcissism to empathy. So like we're using these words, but sometimes they could be applied to many different aspects of how we think, reason, will, and understand. They want to fund wars across the planet Earth They want to manipulate, allegedly, is what I've learned to say. Allegedly, they are now utilizing their resources to pigeonhole different universities across the country to submit to their beck and call. Yes. Which is why some of the riots are taking place and students are figuring out certain things about their professors and their deans, and some city governments are taking a stand towards it and seeing that it's a nefarious act because you have but you have allegedly individuals that are from paramilitary organizations or ex-military organizations that are organizing some of these riots with the intent to cause confusion, which is divide and conquer. These are military strategies that Hannibal, another Moor, imagine that, is the one who studied the most because he was a high-level general that went through the Alps and took elephants that were the ancient tanks. The ancient tanks were the elephants. That's what kind of is designed off of, and that's what he was riding into, kind of fight against the Roman Empire. The thing is, though, if they want to make a speedy reparation to the utmost of their power, then we can have a conversation. But until then, I think that we have the capability to do without those who don't want anything to do with us. And the us that I'm speaking about is we the people. And we the people has not really had a chance really at all. There were some pockets. We had some spurts. We had some runs. And then some other stuff happened. And then it happened and happened again. And then individuals that realized that they could then manipulate individuals into only identifying our country as a democracy when nowhere in our Constitution, nowhere in the Pledge of Allegiance does it say the word democracy. Now, being a Democrat is one thing. Having a democracy is another thing. They're not the same. And to my understanding, it's indivisible to the republic for which it stands. So we have a republic form of government, not republican, republic form of government that has a republic representation of a republic democracy, or even say democratic republic, whatever semantics. But those components are there, which is one of the other reasons why in my campaign regalia, if you will, is utilizing the color purple. So not only purple dealing with royalty, purple is also when you mix blue and red together. And to double down on that, we know purple or violet, that's the crown chakra. So we're really trying to elevate our thinking and, again, get this moral rejuvenation in a worldview that we can have common unity with, not just community. Because community could just be a bunch of people gathering around with no vested interest, with no goals in mind, with no empathy at heart, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have to have common unity. And that's how we can effectively make this change that we seek and desire. In ourselves first, inward, then going outward. Because if the decision is not made internally, that's why the ancient Egyptians said, know thyself. There's a reason why that was expressed on all their universities and schools, for people to know about the internal fight. In Islam we call jihads. For those who did not know, jihad is something that's internal. It's not kill those who are non-Christians. That's blasphemy. That's something that someone usurped and wanted to create an agenda in Islam and has monopolized the whole entire world of Islam. And now the narrative is being spun, and now people look at Islam according to how they look at it because someone made an attempt to do that. And then the last thing I would say, with the spirit of Islam, not to bring it up because I'm a Muslim, but bring it up because we're Americans. And Americans, all who are Americans, they have a connection to Islam that they've never been ever privy to. And that's the oldest treaty that we have in the history of the United States of America. It was with only Moorish Islamic countries. It's a treaty of peace and friendship with Morocco and the United States. It's the oldest living treaty we've ever had with any country. Our oldest embassy in U.S. history is in the Barbary Coast, which was now Tunisia, Tripoli, or Libya rather. It's 1797 or so. It was the oldest U.S. embassy. So there's just things that have to get put in proper perspective. Has to be proper perspective. And then there were beys that did business with the United States. And there's a candidate running for mayor, and his name is Durrell Kinsey Bey. And that connection with the Treaty of Peace and Friendship was for the Muslims and the Christians and all the other religions to be in harmony and peace. And we don't see that. So obviously some part of the treaty has been broken apart and disregarded.
It's interesting because, you know, I feel like maybe there's been a shift in consciousness, maybe post 2020 with a lot of the Black Lives Matter protests and all of that, toward unearthing some of these things that people used to think were conspiracy theories, but now they're just like, oh no, our government really, really did that, and it has its hands everywhere, and this is terrifying, and we need to stop this. But yeah, I mean, I was at the protest at Intel in Hillsborough just recently because they're building a facility in Israel right now during a war, and I apparently think that that's a good business idea. And so, like, it's not crazy; it's really happening. And you know,
it is crazy. And it's really
okay, yes, it is crazy, and it is happening. Both of those things are true. But yeah, and I think also just, I mean, living right now in this moment, you know, the campus protests are a really big deal, and I was just down there a couple nights ago, and yeah, I mean, we're all craving. I loved what you said about common unity as opposed to community. And I think we're all in a place where we're craving that. And it's just kind of a matter of how do we turn the bureaucratic systems toward that end? Because I think, like, most people that I've encountered are essentially good. Like, most people are essentially good. And I think it's these structures that are really forcing us to look at the world in a particular pigeonholed type way. And so what can we do as, you know, totally fresh people coming into government to try to gently turn that narrative, or maybe not so gently, toward actually serving the people, toward actually serving the unity, toward streamlining these processes, all of those things. So yeah, I'm just really feeling resonant with what you're saying, and I just feel like we're really in a moment where this is all possible.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that are simple for the first step, and then the follow through is where things get challenging, because there's a lot of distractions in this world and in our society that are intentional, some, and others are just so happen to catch our attention. You know, one thing for sure and two things for certain, when it comes to getting individuals out to participate in the civic engagement process, you know, predominantly these people are adults. And being a youth advocate, I think to myself, and I've thought to myself, where is the civic engagement classes? Where are the classes that are teaching civics in the school system? Because I mean, I work in the school district, and I heard a rumor allegedly that it was stripped out of the education system because it provided a lot of leaders, it provided a lot of activism, it provided a lot of change that individuals that had alleged power were not ready to yield to. And so we have to get back into that. I think that the things that we're going to establish, see, the thing is about this, that I want everyone here and everyone listening to understand. These changes that we're talking about are going to happen. It's inevitable. We get to decide kind of like when, right? It could be urgent, or it could be, you know, when I'm 50, 20 years from now. I aspire for it to be taking place in the first year of my administration, at least here in Portland, so we can showcase what it is that we do and how we get down. You know, and people have to own their decision to vote who they want to vote for. And perhaps maybe even make it subjective and a little bit of objective in the decision making, because you definitely want your emotions to kind of have some interaction with your decision, but you don't want your emotions to be negatively manipulated to a point where you say, well, this is a candidate who's a Muslim terrorist, and now he's going to be running for mayor and is going to make Sharia Islam all over the city of Portland. Well, no, that's not how it works. And also, to get to a point of having a clear mind, you have to understand what Islam is about from someone who's practicing Islam. And understanding, too, just as much there's diverse religions and nationalities, that's the same amount of religions there are in Islam, where most people don't want to talk about that either. You know, there's Shias, there's Sunnis, there's Sufis, there's Hanabis, there's Wahhabis, there's me, you know, because we don't practice any of those groups' way of practicing Islam. Islam in China looks Chinese, you know, but there's people in Saudi Arabia who have a lot of resources, and they kind of dictate what Islam looks like on the world scale. And because of that, that then taints the worldview of a lot of other things that are happening and why people respond and react to certain things. And so, again, we have to recognize that the youth is relevant. Like, you know, I often, you know, feel that they've been neglected in so many ways. Mm-hmm. And so now is a time for us to put them at the table. You're a member of society. Now, yes, legally, based off our federal and state laws and city laws presently, you know, you're not able to vote. Well, I remember a time in history where they said that people that looked like me, they couldn't do anything. Mm. But then there were some laws that were changed, there were decisions that were made, and all of a sudden, I can vote and not be lynched for it, right? Because that was something that happened. This N-word voted. Mm. And this is something that Noble Drew Ali actually put in action. He had over 3,000 members of our organization voting a particular direction for particular candidates. At the same time in the South, they were lynching our people for the same act. So we have to wonder, what was he teaching these so-called Negroes, these innovative actions that caused them to literally be an American citizen regardless of what anyone said, and actually be engaged in the process, not run away from responsibility, because that is what civics is all about. The responsibilities and duties of citizenship. People are talking about burning the flag, taking the flag down, don't have any understanding of what the flag colors even represent. Well, amnesty and commerce and the blood of the fight and the war. Okay, that's good. Let's go further. Those colors come from East Africa, where you had visited before you came back to the United States. West, the White Nile, Blue Nile, and the Red Nile. Now, that's not a coincidence, because we see that all the other nations that went into Egypt and destroyed everything there, or tried to, they had those same colors. Mm-hmm. And when you put those colors together, what do you get? You get purple. And then when you go further than that, you see that those are Canaanite colors. Those are colors that they expressed when they were traveling on the seas. So it's like, we have to put things in the proper context so that way we can clearly understand where it is we are and where it is we're going. Mm-hmm. You know, and this is how we recognize, like, okay, if I'm a person of European descent and my ancestors were English or my ancestors were Dutch and they owned slaves, okay, that was your ancestors that did that. My ancestors did horrible things. Yeah, I talk about the great stuff, but the horrible things, they had slaves. And the whole concept of slavery that they, you know, end up experiencing was something that they did first. That's something that no one in America, predominantly, that's of African descent, doesn't like to have that conversation. Mm-hmm. We talk about how we were kings, queens and ruled the seas, and we mapped the stars and the skies, and we found Ceres, and we found all these galaxies and without a microscope, and we did all these masterful things, created whole building structures, created the pyramids. Yet we made a decision to own a human being, and then we had karma. But people don't like to hear that because they're like, oh no, that's the victim mentality. We have to take responsibility. The whole concept of slave or Slav is from the Slavic people. They were one of the first people who were human slaves on the planet Earth. And then everyone else had been subjected to that. And prior to that, we have the concept, in servitude, which is something totally different. People were, in a contract, a literal contract with someone, then they had to do whatever it is that they told them to do. That's one thing. The other thing is being a slave, where your whole history, culture, religion, the name of your God, the name of your family lineage is wiped out. That's another level of atrocity, right? So again, we have to put things in proper perspective, because if not, this concept of mainstream narrative will swallow us up, and we won't be able to produce anything, because we will be doing the analysis paralysis of a bunch of logical fallacies that have been perpetuated on us.
I absolutely see your connection to the youth in everything you're saying, and civics in particular. That is a thing I've thought about for a while, of really, they barely get through the 3 branches of government.
Yeah.
As far as what kids are coming through and supposed to understand and be able to make good decisions based on that. And that does seem like a huge miss.
Yeah.
I'm really appreciating everything you're saying about that.
Appreciate you.
The book that I'm reading, actually, the part that I read of Sand Talk today, it talks a lot about the education system and how our current American U.S. education system was modeled after the Prussian government's education system, which their whole goal was to have the strongest military. And in order to do that and convince people to risk their lives for their country, they intentionally expanded the definition of adolescence. So it used to be that you would come of age much earlier, but in order to essentially it documented the intentional infantilization of adolescence and expanded that period beyond a few months to a few years and indoctrinated that into the education system. Yeah. And so when we're talking about people can't vote until they're 18, that's part of that infantilization that's happened. And you can also take it further and say inmates aren't allowed to vote. And so suddenly you're incentivized to criminalize your political opponents. And, and then how are the youth your political opponents and all of these things? So, yeah, it's kind of blown my mind how many synchronicities are connecting up in this conversation for me. So,
and then you think about the number 18, right? And what that signifies in regards to certain cultures is the age of mastery. So when you go to ancient Egypt, when you went through the temples, and people think that the ancient Egyptians, the Kemites, were literally just worshiping these structures all day, and then they would go about growing food, and then they would go back to worshiping these building structures. It's kind of laughable, but what the thing is that how we go to college and we get 1 degree in one subject. Imagine getting, 15, 20 degrees in 18 years.
Yeah.
This, master's degree. I mean, this is masters of masters, because you're mastering all these different aspects of life and existence, in addition to all these different sciences, in addition to religion, and having it be one entity, because it wasn't separate.
That is a
the
thing
church
I've
and state.
Thought,
They separated church and state. There's a reason why they did that, and they knew what they were doing, because a lot of the people who put our government together, and a lot of people who were in government, they were Masons, the high degree Freemasons. They're Shriners. They're part of these secret organizations, and they know a lot about what I'm saying. They just took an oath not to say it in public. They say this stuff in private, or trivialize it, or learn it in their ritualistic experiences, and then because they have a quality network, then they put those people in powers to continue to have the control in the back, so from, judges and, police officers, police chief, and of course, the molding of this society. Oh, it's so crazy how they did this. Like, it's not good, but it's like fascinating because you did it so methodically. Like, you literally thought through it. And then as it unfolded, you're like, oh no, let's do this. It's like, no, let's pivot over here. So they first, it was for like those who were descendants of Irish people. It was a time where certain places on the East Coast, they lived with African people. Like, they hung out with them. The Irish are often called the N-words of Europe.
Yep.
Because they're potato farmers. Oh, you're lowly. You're a white N-word. Could you imagine hearing that? Just that phraseology, white N-word. Wow. Like the mindset of a person who's actually felt the need to say that for someone else. Because that's why some of them were actually on the plantation picking cotton with my great-great-grandfathers.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the Irish were.
Absolutely. And then they end up getting promoted. So then they became the officers or overseers. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shout out to KRS-One for that one. So overseer, officer, right, then went get the property, the slaves. But see, they flipped the script on us because Abraham Lincoln, who they don't want to tell, is of African descent as well. And that's one of the reasons why they killed him, as well as him wanting to stop the central bank from formulating in America. But that doesn't mean, because of his ancestry, that doesn't mean that he cared about these people that he's connected to. He was a businessman like everybody else. And his plan with the amendments was to take everyone out of chattel slavery and put them in mental slavery. Because it was thought that when you go into the 14th and 15th Amendment and it talks about the citizenship, it had nothing to do with a lot of people. It was more so those who had seceded from the United States government. They formulated the Confederate States of America. They were no longer, they expatriated. They were no longer Americans in that regard. And so then they had to get citizenship back through the 14th and 15th Amendment. But the people who were slaves, they were citizens. They were born here. They just wouldn't recognize as such. Constitution talked about all men are free and equal. Now, their intention versus their word. So the letter of the law versus spirit of law. It is what it is. It's written. Just like how the Bible, people say it was written because it was written down. So your interpretation of that, I mean, that's up for interpretation, right? But you said all men. And see, now in Old English, when you're talking about men, that's humanity. You know, how you interpret it and all that stuff, that's something different, but that's humanity. So all men are equal and they're all one and all this beautiful, colorful language, right? Mm. It's there. There is no need for the 14th and 15th Amendment for people to be citizens other than those who lost their insurance policies that they had on their slaves. Mm-hmm. And then they were supposed to get compensated, and they got compensated. Some of them got compensated because they had insurance policy and they lost their property, and they were then they got their reparations. But those who they had enslaved, we know the story about that. Mm-hmm. But it's just like putting things in proper perspective, like how it actually played out, how the things were put in place. So back to the Irish, though, they promoted them to that position. Then they got into the unions started coming out because at one time, it's so crazy because the unions, a lot of them were, I wouldn't say they were racist, but it was kind of predominantly only Europeans who could be involved. But the thing is, for the purpose of being a union, to have the work being kind of solidified, which is now good for a lot of people that are involved with unions, because I used to be a union member back in Eastern Washington. And the thing is that you have people who got off the plantation and they just went right to building stuff, right to building cities, right to getting land, and they did all these things and they ended up building all these cities, and then they started building banks, and then they started insuring the banks, and then they said, oh, whoa, slow down. Because they went into Congress, they were senators, they were mayors, they were sheriffs. It was like, oh my gosh, we have to stop. You need to open up a Ku Klux Klan organization. You know what I'm saying?
About Reconstruction time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it was like I mean, I don't know how many senators and congressmen that existed that were African descent that were in the South.
Yes.
Like, it's asinine. This is like, oh, no, we don't want to talk about that. We just skip over that.
Right? I remember learning about that for the first time, definitely as an adult, and being like, wait a second, we were doing it? We were like building a world together, building the country together? And then people got pissed.
You know, it's really interesting because it's really similar to what happened with serfdom and the formation of capitalism. Like the way that a lot of people tell the story that, capitalism saved us from serfdom. But what was actually true is there was a whole bunch of peasant and serf rebellions, and that we had a more equalitarian society, especially in Europe, that's where I know about anyway. Where they were very community oriented. There was common land that people shared and nurtured, and information commons and all of these things that we are talking about wanting today. Mm-hmm. And then people who wanted to accumulate capital and who had the land, they decided to enclose the land. So then there was the process of enclosure, which made it possible for private property, which made it possible for land ownership, which made it possible for wealth accumulation, which created capitalism. So capitalism actually took away all of the things that we held in common as like a peasant class. So it's very interesting how stories get told, right? And it all comes around. But I guess, like, for me, and I love that we're taking this conversation all over the place globally and, federal government and all of that. But I guess, like, I'm really curious about what you feel the unique opportunity is in being part of a local government and being part of a city government and your role in that. What do you think about that?
I love that because politics is local. Because it's just a Rotarian complexion. Like the cities govern themselves, and then the county or the regional government, and then the state government, and then the federal government. It's just all Rotarian in complexion.
Nested scales, like we talked about last time.
There it is.
And so, to recognize, that as a city we ought to work towards being self-sufficient. Like it's one thing to say you're an American and that be that. It's another thing to say, this is my expression of being an American as a city, which is a goal of mine to be self-sufficient and provide food access to every Portlander. Mm-hmm. Not just providing it, because if someone gets a fish, they eat a fish. But you teach someone, or a vegan fish for my sake, they can be able to learn how to get their own fish. And so that's transforming these yards into farms. Because those yards that were created goes back to the conversations we've been having where people wanted to get out of the country and then go into the city with the big lights to then get a job. Wait a minute, you own like 85 acres. Yeah. And then your brother, he owned 100 acres. And then so on and so forth. It just left it all behind. And so we want to look into how we use our water, when dealing with the Water Bureau, to be able to add value to these plants. So that way we can have something to eat. And it'll kind of go back into the serfdom component in regards to community, the commune, the commonality, because then we can be more intentional when it comes to the neighborhood associations. Like that's one of my biggest things is to get the neighborhood associations more fortified in their association with the neighborhoods.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good description. No,
Yeah.
for real. I don't think most Portlanders know about their neighborhood associations
Not a
to
clue.
start, and they're almost entirely white from what I can tell. And yeah, and then they have very broad, very confusing definitions of what they are, what their powers are. But yeah, it could be a really wonderful community resource and a way for people to get involved. But yeah, so say more, because
Yeah,
I'm
well,
very,
I
I'm
want
here
the
for
neighborhood
this.
associations. There's 95 of them in Portland, and I want them to be like the city within the city.
Yes.
That government that's of the people, literally only for the people in that area, and being able to come up with great ideas to be able to, provide any access to support the community members, right? Because we do live in Portland, right? And then we are American citizens, right? And then we are humans, right? So going again into the in and then bringing it out, like that whole cycle of what sustainability is really all about, and regenerative agriculture, I would say, and then regenerative thinking, regenerative empathy, because we have to stop just using the word and actually put it into action, because we obviously have shortcomings. And instead of, being embarrassed by the shortcomings, you say, go in deeper. Like, why are you feel embarrassed? Why does that make you feel that way? And start dissecting that. Like, we have to make the city of Portland a epicenter of mental health, community engagement, but more so putting the public in public safety. Right. So it's one thing to say, oh, I'm gonna call the police, but it's another thing to say, well, I know how to defend myself and my neighbors, and I am adamant about their well-being. That's a long path to get there, but that is the standard, right? Because if you don't have standards, then you don't know, when you're not hitting the stand. Like, if you don't have anything, you don't know where you're at, or where you can even kind of find a point of reference to be able to reevaluate what the plan is. So then with that, going back to the capitalism, the serfdom, if we're able to produce our own food here in the city of Portland, like I see there's a bunch of plants here, the food that we eat and the grocery stores we go to may not be as many as needed, because you have more markets, you have more community interaction, you have barter systems taking place, because we are in American society and the US dollar is what it is and has all these manipulative abilities, we don't have to use the dollar the way that this has been used. I mean, there's no law that says you can't use other means of trade and transportation and agreement. That's the ancient way of doing things, because that's the way that worked. And there were some people that then wanted to make some adjustments that was nefarious. And then we have what we have today. There's a reason why models are even made that are sound and have the intention of growth and development, right? And so when you're not managing the growth and development, and then you're infusing, I don't like to overuse it, but it's narcissism and ego that causes things to be, adjusted for the wrong purposes. So the cost of food will go down. So when you go to the restaurants, yes, the person who has their, what's it called? Why am I skipping my food truck? They have their food truck. They're going to still get their pay. They just may not have to charge as much, because there's a balance of the community members. Like, we're basically now paying you more so for your ability to make these amazing food, this artwork that you're displaying. We're paying more so for that, as opposed to the actual food, because we're producing the food.
Right.
Because we could go and cook the food ourselves. And so that is what we're talking about, empowering. And I say that to doubling down on that, because my grandfather was a Black Panther. And my uncles were Black Panthers, etc. And there's people who, are really adamant about the Black Panthers, being so good, because they speak to what they did good, and then they don't speak to what was not so good. And then also there's this frustration, Black power, Black power. You can't have Black power if you don't have food. You can't start a revolution if you can't feed your soldiers, comrades, etc. You're trying to fight a war of any kind, you should be able to feed yourself, so then you could be able to be strong enough to show someone else how to do it or produce something for them to get strong. Like, each one teach one.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You said turning yards into food, and I'm absolutely on board with that. I might even take it further and turn streets into food, at least some of them, because we could start phasing out cars. I think Portland is really in a moment where we could be the leader on that. And I'm not talking about electric vehicles, although that's like in some scenarios a good next step.
Right.
But we can't even be doing electric vehicles because the mining that is required for that is there's not enough on the planet to convert all the cars we have into electric vehicles. So we seriously need to be looking at public transportation and communal transportation, and then we end up with, hey, we don't need to use these parking lots anymore. Hey, we don't need to use these residential streets anymore. Hey, we have parking that's outside of the city, and then you use transportation to get deeper into the city. And then we have so much more space for food. And as we're entering in a period of food insecurity due to climate disasters, I really think we need to be thinking about that on a big, big scale, because we need to be able to grow our food right here. We can't be relying on imports when we've got an earthquake coming, when we've got floods, when we've got fires. We can't be importing our food from across the sea. It doesn't work. So I feel that. I feel that. It's so important.
Double down on that. I'm a Muslim, so I don't say piggyback. I say camelback because we rode on camels. So with that being said, we have to bear in mind that there's a technology called blockchain that exists that is not something that is stupid. It was very well thought out, and it's pretty fascinating. And there's other aspects that we could support its development with AI technology as well. In addition to that, there's this million-old or 150 trillion-year-old mineral. There's two of them that I'm thinking of in particular. One's gold and one's silver. And that is what a lot of other nations are using their paper dollars to back it behind. So that's something we probably should be utilizing as citizens and as a city. We should have a gold reserve. We should have a silver reserve. We should be able to find ways to hedge against inflation. When you think about protecting people, you're talking about being a mayor. A mayor is very much like a chief. It's also kind of like a president of a corporation, because the city of Portland is a corporation. And so, yes, yeah.
Right.
So
you're absolutely right.
when we're dealing with these corporate bodies and entities, we have to bear in mind that there are other corporate entities that have vested interests on the American economy's downfall. So, with our attempt to protect ourselves, we have to move down that path, because the U.S. dollar is not in good shape, and it hasn't been in good shape since late 1960s, when the president, what's his name, Richard Nixon, took us all to gold standard and the Bretton Woods system, and he took us off a whole bunch of different things. And then he told a lot of nations a lot of things to get them to buy more, and then now they're being in a position where they're compromised. And so then that's where we are part of this unfortunate American empire, because it's not really a small little cute little country anymore. We have army bases over in the thousands and hundreds across the planet Earth. And President Eisenhower had some things to do with that, him being in the military, and He said, beware of the military-industrial complex, yet he was a part of its fortification and expansion. So that, again, this information, going back to Prussia, which is so beautiful that you shared that, because it's paramount, because the Rockefeller family were a part of the development of the Department of Education. And he wanted a society of workers. And so there's things, again, we're going back to that nucleus of reevaluating how we're looking at things, because sometimes the issues that we face is based on our thinking or our inability to think accurately. And I obviously suffer from that myself, with times arguing with my wife. The wife is always right. And so even when my ego thinks that's not the case, I have to submit to the truth, because that's what my campaign slogan is: truth will unite us. And of course, the caveat is we have to embrace it. Again, we have to embrace it, and we have to embody it. We have to be what it is we know. Like I said earlier, this is already going to happen. Everything we're talking about is going to manifest, whether I'm elected or not. That's the beautiful thing. Because the universe, God, Allah, El Shaddai, whichever, is always in control. Like, if you're thinking about those positive thoughts, the innovative thoughts, the strategic analysis of all these systems all around the world, people are actually doing that. That's not like you don't get these certain systems or ideas because no one's actively thinking about a plan of action.
That is hopeful.
Absolutely. Hope is the beacon light.
Yeah, I agree.
When you're lost at sea and you see the tower, not the light tower, I'm not, Jehovah's Witness, but respect to the Jehovah's Witness, the watchtower, you have that light that kind of shows what's in the dark, so it can reveal itself. Yeah, and with that too, those who have been concealing these things that I'm sharing with you, because unfortunately this is not new information. I'm 30 years old, and this information has been out before I was even born. My father and my grandfather both served in the military, and they learned things, and it's like, oh, wow. So, yeah, the public is really far behind in a lot of ways. Like, there was laws that were passed in, 1933, to be particular, at April 5th, where the Federal Reserve, went into effect. And then that's when the gold standard was structured in a certain way with FDR. And then that put us in a certain situation. And he was the one who served 12 years as a president, because he was trying to position things so the order could continue. Of course, his uncle or some, that's why the conspiracy is that all of them allegedly are related. All those people.
Oh, yeah.
But going back real quick to the separation of church and state. So George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, the founding fathers, if you will, they were striving to flee from a certain form of oppression. Now, of course, they're businessmen. They had a certain intellect, so they know how to maneuver around society, but they did not like the experience they had. So they didn't like the business that they were experiencing, so they went and created a business. It's called the United States of America. Yes, it is a government. Yes, it is an entity that has a spirit to it and things like that. But it is a corporation, just like the Democratic Republic of China. These are all corporations fighting for resources of other corporations. And, of course, we individuals with birth certificates and social security number, we're corporations. Yeah, you set up a birth and the baby is born, and then there's a certificate that goes to the baby, which is kind of like a certificate of incorporation into society.
I thought you were going to say it's like a serial number, but okay.
Oh, that too. Yeah. But more so, you can even say a bank account number,
social security number.
So
Barcode.
Yeah, barcode. Yeah, exactly. So now, knowing these things, it's not possessing of good things or things, it's knowing how to use them. Because if you're not aware of how to use certain things, then people will take advantage of you. That's what I'm striving to avoid.
So keep us ignorant in the school system, and therefore we are easily taken advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. All the free thinkers with respect to college, a lot of them, they didn't seem to do so well in college, or they didn't really engage in college, or they dropped out. Like one of the poster child of success and innovation is Mark Zuckerberg. Went to Harvard and just dropped out. He was like a millionaire. And so now he works
I
with
know my problem is I've dropped out 4 times and I never made a penny.
Oh, Jerry.
I must have been doing something wrong.
Cared too much about civil rights.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But the righteousness is on the upswing, though. Especially when you start seeing, you see patterns too. You're seeing laws being adjusted, to those who don't identify as a male or female, identify as non-binary, such as yourself, or they don't identify as a man or a woman, and then the people who don't have ears to hear forget the fact that we're humans having a human experience. And so recognizing that's how we can set the tone and say, hey, we here in Portland, we got a lot of things in store for ourselves. Mm-hmm. The thing is, which I'm very happy about and excited, this is without me being elected. With that being said, those who may come on this podcast that are running for mayor, the question that should be possibly asked is, if you are not elected, will you be able to fulfill the things that you're striving to do as mayor? Because I know without a shadow of doubt, I will be doing that. Mm-hmm. Because it's about the work. I want to be the mayor of City of Portland, to be the leader to put things in the proper direction for the country. This is a national election. It's not local only. That's why, to respect that, it's just to showcase the locality. Mm-hmm. This is what everyone else can do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Be a part of it or not. Because when we begin to fortify our city and its structure, and everyone's empowered.
You know what I love about what you just said, though, the fortification aspect? Everything else you've said during this conversation flies in the face of what my brain would have said about fortification at the beginning. Because fortification, to my mind, is building a wall, enclosing it, keeping it safe from outside forces. But what you're saying for fortification is
the bridge.
Bridge.
Yes.
But entirely from within.
Yeah.
Like that it's starting within and moving out from there.
And including people, bringing people in.
And fortifying it by virtue of its unity.
Well, kind of like when you can fortify yourself with vitamins and minerals, right? Like it's in it, right? Like kind of like that.
Totally.
You through nourishment, you can fortify yourself, right? And that comes back to food. And while we're going back to food, I want to go back to water, because you mentioned that we need to be really thinking critically about our water and how we're using our water and
how
using
we charge
it
people for something that's natural. Yes.
Right, exactly. And we talked a lot last time in our podcast about bioregionalism and organizing around watersheds and things. And I would really like to see the definition of Portland change to be more centered around our ecological landscape instead of our municipal landscape.
Yeah, those things that have no tangible evidence except someone telling you that this is the border and this is not. Yeah. That is asinine. And it is ludicrous with respect to Chris Bridges, the rapper. It's common sense is not common. And when you're dealing with bioregionalism, which is a fascinating concept, and dealing with the Cascadian Fault, like we talked about financial, we talked about economic, talked a little bit about social, but now it's a point that we dive deeper into climate and environmental aspects of things. From the outside, from the inside, we talked about like the home environment, like domestic violence, like environmental justice, that doesn't exist there. So we have to definitely address that in regards to environmental justice and climate justice, because that home climate, if it's like that for families, a lot of these innovative, ethereal plans that we have on our agenda will not manifest. So that is something to also consider in regards to climate justice and climate transformation, if you will. So partnerships. The goal is to strive to connect with different municipalities to be more in sync. Mm-hmm. That is a will thing and a desire thing. And we have to just keep pushing for it. I mean, I'm going to be pushing for it because we have to. It's so simple to me in a lot of ways. But like, when I think of bioregionalism, what comes to mind is agrovoltaics. Agrovoltaics, super fancy, I know. All the smart people come up with these fancy stuff. But agrovoltaics is essentially utilizing I guess you could say, a concept of using space to produce more solar energy. Now, of course, we have the panel issue with the cobalt mines and stuff like that. However, it's something that we could examine with care. So an example is you have your rows, and then between the rows, you have, your walk space, and then there's a little bit more space for these, basically these posts that are solar panels that go with the sun all throughout the day, producing solar for that area constantly. And then the agrovoltaics is a concept that's more on the water. It's panels that are floating on the water. Wow. So like think about Marine Drive, like having an excess amount of solar panels, idealistically, that would be able to produce more energy from the sun for the city. And also, when talking about, collaborating with other municipalities, let's bring that to Astoria, bring that to Seaside, and say, okay, we're going to be in partnership to be able to produce more energy for the state of Oregon. Like, we're not talking about, let's do it for our city. Like my vision is for us to be able to work on self and then be able to build on out, to then be able to have sustainability, to then be able to show that model to other cities, to then collaborate with them to be able to do it for the state, then to do with the state of mind with that in mind to then go across the country. And then as we do that, those who have any other intentions other than to add value to American people, they will no longer have those ideologies. They won't really exist anymore. They'll be obsolete. And that's why running for mayor is so paramount, because, again, it's not only a national thing, it's also international. I have connections in Africa. I have connections in Europe. I have connections in Asia. And there's things in the United States called sister cities. Well, instead of just doing an exchange of ideas and culture and food, because I like food. Obviously, I'm on a fast, but I love food. Collaborating economically. And it can be done because right now, currently, our state of Oregon has some sort of a trade agreement with Ireland, of all places. And beyond that, the state of Illinois has just announced that the sovereignty of Liberland, which is a country in Central East Europe, and they bear witness that they're a sovereign nation. So I began to think, like, wow, states can actually do some interesting things. It's just a matter of motivating them.
Yeah, well, I mean, Oregon is listed as, or I think Israel is listed as one of Oregon's top business partners right now, too. So Oregon is definitely playing on the international stage, that's for sure. Wow. I know.
I feel so educated by this evening, everyone.
Yeah, and then creating economic zones. I mean, there's different ways, because right now, when we think about nationally, or internationally rather, Africa is producing the youngest, most innovative people on the planet. And it's not because it's Africa. It just so happens to be in Africa. And then we think about how neglected and oppressed and subjected African people have been just in the continental region known as Africa. it is time to really assist with the poverty eradication process. You know, and that's what Portland's really all about when in regards to justice. And that's where I sometimes, and this is probably controversial, but sometimes I do have concerns with how we look at the war in Palestine, and how we looked at the assassination or murder of George Floyd, and then our response or maybe even reaction to it, because there's been wars in Africa for hundreds of years, and there's not been many, riots or promotion for that, and even here in America, like America is one continent with 3 different regions. Right. So in America, in southern part, you have cartels, you have people that are subjected, you have people that are trying to come to the United States of America, and they're being raped and they're being manipulated in so many different ways. And that's because of the Monroe Doctrine. It was President Monroe. He established a doctrine to be able to punish and suppress any form of power and liberation and unity or pride to anyone in America, the American region, other than the United States. That's why the United States is the way it is. That's why no one has ever allegedly come to the borders of Texas and blow up Texas or do any of these military operations, because they designed it that way. The CIA, the DEA, the ATF, the FBI, these systems have destroyed America as a whole, all America, North, Central, and South, and adjoining islands. Unless you follow their objectives, you submit to their will, you'll be like Canada. Not having a little issue, we beat you down when you came and you destroyed us in the East Coast. Now you're resolved, with no issues there now. Okay, now you learned your lesson. That's how they look at it. You learned the lesson, Canada, and you're not going to bother us anymore. We won't bother you, but you're going to follow our agenda. That's why Canada is considered the West, yet Mexico is not. And unfortunately, when you put people in a situation where they're being disrespected, disregarded, and disenfranchised, they then become either desperate or they begin to think strategically and say, you know what? I'm done being bullied. I'm not going to be bullied anymore. You have a bunch of anti-bullying laws, America, anti-bullying, cyberbullying rules and all this stuff. Yeah, we're done being bullied by you. And so that's why then you have China coming to the Americas and establishing all these businesses in Argentina and Nicaragua and Paraguay and Brazil, and it's all in Cantonese or Mandarin. And then you start having this BRICS organization putting things in perspective for the interest of China and Russia. Yeah, we're in some trouble. And so if we can at least say, hey, white flag, which is, we're not surrendering, we're just saying, hey, it's peace. We're going to do things differently. We're going to work on stopping and ceasing or decreasing the sex trafficking that happens in our city. Like, there's just so many things that happen in our city that is just overlooked. Like you say, don't say defund the police, and then, principal ends up getting involved with a sex trafficking ring with your children, which has just happened just last year. There's a principal. He was involved with the sex trafficking ring. There's just a whole bunch of students and girls, and that's here in Portland. That has to cease.
Absolutely.
It's big money. It's big money. Slavery was big money. You think sex trafficking is any different? And this is in sex trafficking like that in Portland, and prostitution with respect to those who are voluntarily engaging in those acts as a human being. You consent to do whatever you want as opposed to against your consent, right? That has been around for a very long time in the city of Portland itself. We're talking about the 1800s. We just have to change the way we think that our life's going to change, because that's the end. That's the encapsulation of what we're discussing here. Is change the way you think, and your life will change, and make it a lifestyle, not just a quick fix. Because my message today, Friday, May 3rd, 2024, will be much different. Friday, May 3rd, 2027. That'll be way more developed to eradicate a lot of the atrocities that we see just in our city. So it's time to get to work. We're doing a lot of talking. Not that we are doing a lot of talking. We got to do that for the sake of helping the individuals. But there's been a lot of talking, a lot of planning for plans to be planned for planning's sake, to plan about how plans are going to be planned out with no implementation. We have to put things in action. Action is her delight, and she will not be departed from it. That's how the soul works. The soul is active all the time. The soul thirsts after knowledge, just information, good, bad, or indifferent. The soul just wants to experience it, take it for a ride, go down that rabbit hole, come back up to the universe, even if the information is destructive. The soul just thirsts after this.
Oh, so good.
So the talking's important, but we can't stop there.
Yes, and actually I wanted to jump on that a little bit because I was at a land use and transportation forum where they were talking about land use and transportation plans for 2040.
Whoa.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, but we've got 5 years before we have like massive food insecurity, transportation insecurity, climate change. We don't know what the world is going to look like in 2040. I don't even know if we're going to make it that long. And you want to plan for land use and transportation? You think you could? That is so much hubris. Like, they're like, no. 16 years from now, no. You just think about 16 years in the past. 2004, no, even 2008 is a very, very different world.
Right.
Very different world, and I don't think you could have planned land use well back then. For now, right?
You didn't.
Right. Yeah. So I hear you about that. Absolutely.
We have a system in place that just grinds along and doesn't have the ability to self-reflect. So that's what citizens should be about. We should be reflecting on this, and we've tried when they want to widen 205 or I-5 or whatever, instead of providing public transportation and bicycle safety. It's like, the word delusional comes to mind, and how we buy into this delusion, and it's not just at that level. We buy into the delusion that we don't have to do anything about climate. It's just climate after all, and we can't do anything about it. That's delusional. But that's
prophecy.
Also when somebody turned off the switch for power to the people. So if somebody turns the switch off, we have to turn it back on. I was saying earlier, John Trudell used to say, the ruling powers don't have power, they have authority. We have power. It's a very important distinction. But we've been taught to devalue our power and bow before authority.
And that empowers them. And
so in some ways it's changing minds. But more than that, it's changing hearts. That's why artists is, because art has a more direct impact on the heart. We need to change both, but you can't change it with the mind. You have to change it by connecting as human beings to each other from the heart, because that's what, as near as I can tell, I've been working on it for 83 years, it's what we're supposed to do. That's what we're meant to be. Some parts of that were more present, or as my friends like to say, when I was a kid, some parts of that were more present if you were white. They weren't present if you were black. But talking to each other, agreeing to disagree, working together for something called the common good. Between the Depression and the war, there was that consciousness out of those experiences. And then, I'm not exactly sure where it all went wrong, but greed and individualism taken away from mutual assistance, which is another thing we'll be talking about.
Oh, mutual
along the
aid.
way. Yeah, mutual aid
Yeah.
is critical. So wake up, America. It's, you can do it. You really can, because you're basically good. You just don't know you're good. So we have to remind people that they're good
Yeah.
by showing them what it looks like.
Yeah.
That's step one. Step one. Where do I sign up? I think I'm going to volunteer for this duty.
Yeah, remembering.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, listen to this, Terry. Remembering, right? There's a story, ancient story, about Asar and Aset. Or Asar and Set, sorry. Aset was his brother. Asar was the one who represented the sun, and then Set represented the moon, right? But there was a time where they came into a conflict, and Set killed his brother, chopped him up in a bunch of pieces. And then Aset, his wife, came to remember his body, because the body was dismembered. So thinking about that in a philosophical perspective of the dismembering of the heart of humanity in our country in particular, it was dismembered. So we have to remember, we have to reattach these components that have already worked. They've been tried and true, and again, going to fortifying them and impregnating ourselves with these embodiment practices and approaches.
It's almost as if it started with us. Oh, wait, it does start with us. How we treat each other.
And we're also standing on the shoulders of giants. This work has been going on for a long time. Like when you say that whether or not we get elected, like these things will happen, I feel that in that there is a momentum, there is something growing under the surface. I've heard about it talked as, a mycelial network.
There it is.
Right? And so that's been growing underneath the ground, and it fruits up every once in a while. And I feel like the George Floyd protests, the Palestinian rallies, they are fruiting bodies, but they're indicative of a larger growing network of culture where people are starting to understand what's going on in Congo and Sudan and South American countries and all of these things, because we have these fruiting moments. But we're growing the mycelial network. So even when it's not in the media, we've got these network nodes growing underneath. So absolutely.
That metaphor is amazing.
I have to credit that one to the Free People's Village. It's a great book. It's a very interesting alternate reality book. So yeah.
So if the truth will unite us, is the truth a little bit like the spreading of that truth is the mycelium, and we see the hope, right? Like you're referencing really specific things, but really those are generating hope.
Yeah.
Or they're evidence of our
And the things that
hope.
are sprouting are your children.
Well, sure, they're a part of it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we are feeding those systems, in a sense, even decaying bodies can feed. That would be me. I really wish I were a salmon so I could go upstream, spawn, disintegrate, and young fish would eat me and grow strong. Never. Take that out. It's one of my worst analogies all night. But the point is, I'm 83 years old. I want to be used. If eating my body would move us forward, eat my body.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm not kidding about that. It's
I know you're not.
Yeah,
and I feel so grateful to, at 83, feel this way. And like as someone said, most people your age are looking back. I'm not looking back. I'm not looking back. So
Wow, beautiful.
So being around this table makes me happy.
Oh, Jerry.
Well, it looks like we've gone a couple of hours. Maybe it's...
Yep, we have. Is there any pieces of things that you want to still address, or is there something that you want to say to bring this all together in the context of your mayoral candidacy?
Here it goes. And there's a lot of intersections going on here. So I had to get it in at least once in the podcast.
Yes.
So consider thou art apparent, the importance of thy trust, the being that has produced. It is thy duty to support. And that is a excerpt of the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science of America, our holy book as Moorish Americans. it's full of multiple entendres. And one of them I will address and say, our thoughts are our children. And even if you don't biologically have biological children, bear in mind, you are producing. And so we want to tend to those thoughts that we have and disregard those that are not fruitful for the betterment of humanity.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
How exactly do you record a smile?
With a different device.
Yeah. Oh, it's called video, isn't it?
Yeah. We're not there yet.
This isn't video?
No?
Well, I'm not going to clean up next time.
Well, thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Patty, for having us. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you, Durrell, for your wisdom and your truth and your light.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
what will unfold from this moment forward.
Yeah, we're in manifesting time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Prophetic anointing is real.
That hope we keep talking about, I'm feeling it right now.
Helping other people escape from mental slavery. Yeah, we're in an electrified age, y'all. Yeah.
Boom. On that note.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Speaking Truth to Goodness. Today we had the privilege of hearing from Durrell Kinsey Bey, a Portland mayoral candidate whose eclectic and esoteric discussion opened new avenues of thought that are as broad and diverse as his experiences. Durrell shared insights that go beyond conventional campaign talk, weaving in his rich background and philosophical thought that challenges us to think deeply about what leadership and community engagement really mean in our times. While today's conversation may have meandered through a range of topics that stretch wider than the immediate scope of his campaign, Durrell's approach reminds us of the vast array of influences that shape a candidate's vision for their community. It's these varied perspectives that can enrich our understanding of what it means to lead and serve in a city as dynamic as Portland. We hope this episode has offered you a unique look into the heart and mind of a candidate who is not just running for office, but is also deeply invested in the cultural and spiritual health of our community. Please continue to engage with us by liking, commenting, and sharing this episode. Follow us on Instagram for more updates and behind-the-scenes content. Join us next time as we talk with Timur Ender of District 1. We will keep providing this space to connect with the lives and visions of those shaping the future of Portland. Keep speaking truth to goodness, because goodness is all around.